ready for brand stories? Get inspired and learn from thought leaders, CEOs, business owners, managers, entrepreneurs, and experts who tell their brand stories and share their first-hand insights. Welcome to BrandsTalk. I'm your host, Brigitte Bakowski. I support entrepreneurs and organizations to become future market leaders by transforming their ambitions and passion into an online brand that radiates beauty, brilliance, and authenticity, attracting the clients and recognition they deserve. Let's get started and dive with me into the world of brands. My guest today is Mary Chan. Mary is a podcast strategist, voice coach, and voiceover artist who believes in empowering women to reclaim their voice. Born and raised in Vancouver, Canada, to immigrant parents, Mary was told to stay quiet. Today, Mary gives women self-confidence with their voice because she felt that she didn't have one growing up. After working in radio for 20 years, she struck out on her own and founded Organized Sound Productions, a podcast production and consulting company. I warmly welcome Mary Chan. Welcome to BrandsTalk.
Thank you so much for having me. We are going to have a lot of fun because I know every time we chat, it's a good time.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you, Mary. Talking about voice and podcasting. And you somehow also made your pain to your purpose. It's like me, because we were taught and conditioned to stay quiet. And we really didn't like that. There was this inner conflict for me. And tell us about how you really came about. Okay, this is what I want to do because it's my passion and it's actually a higher purpose. That's what you're striving for. So, how did you come about making voice your topic? First of all, 20 years in radio and now being your own boss with your podcast production company. Tell us and
Yeah.
start from the beginning.
Yeah, wow. We're going to have to condense this 40 some odd year journey I've been on. But yeah, even when I was a little kid, right? I am the youngest of three, coming from parents who came from Hong Kong and China. And so they still had a lot of their traditional values with them. Boys being the prize in the family, right? And the oldest. And so me being the youngest girl and not even the oldest girl, right? I was at the bottom of the totem pole, so to speak. And I was always the one who was supposed to bring tea for our guests, and look pretty and not cause too much noise and all of that stuff. And so I always thought, why? Why do I have to sit here? Or why can't I say anything? Or, I was always told, shh, 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 shut up, shut up, shut up, shh, shh, shh. And I was like, what? I'm just trying to share an opinion. Or, mom told me to do this, so I'm just trying to do it or whatever, right? And the contrast of that traditional upbringing with my Canadian upbringing, because I was born in Canada, was very conflicting. And so, especially in those high school years where you are a bit of a rebel anyway, you are trying to figure out rules and who you are and your identity, but not wanting to make your parents upset. Right? I still have that little girl in me who wants to please their parents. And so I figured out there is that duality where when I'm at home, okay, maybe I will be that quote unquote good girl, the good Chinese girl that my mom and dad want me to be. But when I leave the house, when I am with my friends, that's when I felt like I can really, truly be who I am. Like that goofy personality, someone who's going to make jokes all the time, someone who's just going to interject and be someone who's boisterous. Where at home, felt very confined. And so that's kind of how I walked the line. And even when I was like, okay, high school, what am I going to do with my career after high school? And during that time, we had a career preparation course, and in that course, we had to do this really long survey, answer all these questions. And the top 3 answers in it was to be in radio. And I was just like, "What?" I liked listening to the radio. I listened to the radio all the time, but I had never thought that I could be, like, on the radio as a career. And luck would have it, growing up in Vancouver, there's a place called BCIT, the British Columbia Institute of Technology, that had a 2-year broadcasting program, which had a radio major. And so I applied for that, and I was just like, "Oh, whatever. I'm not gonna get in anyway, right? Like, I'll do my best, but they take so many students." But I got in, and
Wow.
that's when I had to realize, "Uh-oh, I have to tell my parents finally what I'm planning on doing with my life," because they were always telling us, be a doctor, do great in your math tests, be an accountant, or be, in the medical field of some sort. And that was not me all. And the idea of being on the radio was just so much fun. And I wanted to make sure that my career was fun because it always felt like my parents were working to make money, right? Versus doing something they were
Mm,
passionate about.
mm,
So I seriously thought my dad was going to like throw me out of the house and disown me because I was going to choose a career path that wasn't what I thought in their minds, traditional and stable and all
mm,
that stuff.
mm.
So
Yeah.
but luckily he didn't and we have a language barrier, my parents and I, because they speak
Mhm,
Cantonese.
mm,
I speak English mostly and dropped out of Cantonese Chinese school when I was in the 3rd grade, in grade 3. So my elementary Cantonese and their almost non-existent English, it
mhm.
was hard to tell them what this career path looked like.
Oh,
And I was like, you guys listen to the radio. It's kind of like that, but not really, and then they were like, "What?" And I'm like, "Well, it's broadcasting in general, so I will learn some TV things, I'll learn some journalism things too, but it's mostly radio," and I was just, like, trying to grasp words. And then finally, my dad said, "Oh, you mean like when we watch the news on TV every night?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, kind of, like in that setting." And he's like, "Well, okay, because it looks like they wear a new outfit every day. They must make good money because they have new clothes every day on TV." And I just laughed because I knew that wasn't true. Like they have a wardrobe department and stuff, right? Or they have sponsors or whatever it
mm.
may be. Um, but I just let him roll with it because I was like, okay,
Yeah,
if that's what
yeah.
you believe and that's what will make this transition easier for everyone on board, yes, dad, that is what I'm doing.
Mm. Wow, so and then you became a radio host, and you did it for 20 years. So
Yeah.
what made you decide on taking this leap of faith and start your own business now in podcasting?
Well, when I was in radio, although I started out my career being in front of the microphone, having a show during the day and all this stuff, I
Mhm.
really loved the behind the scenes stuff, which
Mm.
was making the commercials for that particular radio station. So there would be a salesperson, they would go out and talk to clients and then give that information to writers. The writers would then write a script. I get the script. So then I get to find the music, the sound effects, record the script myself or coach people to read that script so it doesn't sound like they're reading. And
Mhm.
what happened day in and day out at that radio station was, if I can generalize, the men would come in and they would be all like, "Yeah, I can do this. I can read this." And they are overly confident. They didn't always take direction well because they always thought they knew best. And the women business owners would come in and be unsure of themselves. They had never done this before, so they wanted some more guidance and some more care. And I wanted to make sure whoever came into my studio felt comfortable. Because when you feel comfortable behind the microphone, you will sound so much more like yourself. Because being in a studio or having a microphone in front of your face is not comfortable. Who does that on a regular basis, right? Like it's not
Yeah.
something people do every day. And so when I was finally laid off from my career in 2018, I remember just, sitting at home trying to figure out what to do with my life. And I was already listening to a lot of podcasts at that point. And my husband would just hear me complain about things. And he was like, "Well, you already hear like you're telling me you can hear the bad edits. You're telling me you can hear the audio quality is bad or that you can even hear almost like exactly what microphone they're using and how they're using the microphone. Like why won't you just go and help them?" And I was like, "I don't know what you mean. Like how? How do I what is that?" He's like, "You start your own business. You work from home. Let's give this a try. See if
Yeah,
you can
you're
make it
well
happen."
prepared. You are well
Ye-
prepared. I mean, you have done that, let's say, for 20 years, and
exactly.
you know exactly what needs to be in place, what needs to be done.
Right? Like, I
Yeah,
didn't realize that until he's like, "Go figure it out." And, of course,
yeah.
you're laid off, you have lots of time. So I'm Googling and realizing, "Okay, this is a need. This is
Mhm.
something that I can continue." At that time, I just had the passion for audio. I wanted to work with audio. I
Yeah,
didn't want
yeah.
to do anything else, and working in radio was very hard because then we'd have to move to another city, another part of the country, because there was only, like, 3 other people in the city that did my job,
Mhm,
and so I wasn't ready to pick up and move because we had a young family at the time.
mm,
And so I was like, "Okay, you know what? I'm gonna give this a try. I'm gonna work from
mhm,
home, see if I can find clients." And I did. I found clients, and I was gonna just give this a try for a year, and
mhm.
then we were like, "No, this is something that I can continue to keep doing." And I was really fortunate enough to have, him in my life at that time to see this
Mm,
because you don't know what you don't know.
yeah. You don't know what you don't know.
And I thought that was hilarious because my whole mindset when I was starting this is like, what do I
Mhm,
know about business?
mhm,
How do I know to run a business at all? And then having gone through some of the motions of it all, I realized, well, duh, radio is just a business anyway. I was working in a business without even realizing that I was that whole time because I was just like, oh, this is radio, this is fun. But then I realized, oh, yeah, all the things that I did not like at the radio station, I can now
mhm,
change and do it my way and have the company to support women now, to support people with their voice, and to make sure that they
mhm.
do feel comfortable when they are behind that microphone instead of having that fear of, well, I don't know if I have anything important to say anyway. Or I don't know tech. Like, I don't think I can do this. Or who's going to listen to me anyway? Like making sure that, yeah, podcasting is a great way to showcase your worth, your message, and people are craving to hear it. This whole post
Yeah,
pandemic era that we are in is so human centered, and we are looking for that human to human connection, and podcasting is such a great way to do that.
yeah. So how do you help clients actually to become more confident, to use their voice and leverage that medium, that way of
Yeah,
communication?
there's lots of parts to it. So most of the time when people do come to me, they're like, I want to start a podcast. But there's just so many things about it I might not be comfortable with. And so we go through that process of, okay, what does it mean for you to have a podcast? What is this foundation that you want to
Mhm,
build? And then we strategize on that. And then the voice kind of comes during the process of creating this podcast.
mm,
Because part of that foundation as well is knowing who your ideal listener is. When you know who that person is, it is one specific person you are talking to, you are then talking to that one person. This person will be beside you every time you turn on that microphone. this person will be the one who will answer questions that you might have about the podcast. Like if you say, do I want to talk about this topic? Or should I have this guest on my show? Well, your ideal listener will be right next to you. I actually have a client of mine. She she's an accountant. And when we were going through this process, she was like, oh, I think I want to name my ideal listener Penny. And I'm like, that's so perfect because Penny, the money, but also the
Mhm.
name. It worked so well. And then, because I always say, like, make sure you give them a persona, like, give them a name. Who are they? What are they doing? She's like, okay, well, Penny recently went through a divorce. Penny does not know finances very well. So when I'm talking to Penny, I want to make sure that she feels cared for, that m being you're not being stupid with your money, that everybody needs to start from somewhere, that if you have no credit, that it's okay. This is how you build your credit and be that nurturing person. I'm like, "Perfect." So whenever you are behind the mic and you do feel that nervousness, or if you're like, you're really confused about that confidence piece, hone in on Penny so that
Mhm.
you can see her, you can feel her and speak directly to her. And then all of this nervousness, this energy will then dissipate
It's
because it's
okay.
like you're talking to a best friend.
And besides that, how can we prepare our voice before we get in front of the mic? So this is about what you just explained. It's about the feeling that we have, honing into our ideal client, really
Hmm.
understand what they desire, what their needs are. But how do I prepare my voice before I really get on?
Yeah, so
Do I
we're
have
talking now like the literal voice
exactly the
versus the mental
techniques?
voice.
Yes, should I drink a lot or should I shout or what is the thing that we need to do in order to have a really beautiful voice that shines from the inside out,
Yeah,
apart
exactly.
from the mental element or perspective or level?
Yeah, and then a lot of people don't realize this, but your voice, just like the rest of your body, is muscle. So they're your vocal cords is what makes your voice, come to life. And
Hmm.
because it is a muscle, it needs to have hydration, it needs to be worked out, but it also needs rest, just like the rest of your body. So, well, even before you get behind that microphone, it's not about a quick fix. It's about making sure that you're always hydrated, drinking enough water during the day. People never even think about that. I'm like, yeah, that affects your voice a lot because it does take hours for your body to absorb that hydration. So,
Hmm.
if you're like, oh, I have a podcast interview coming up at, 10 a.m. the next day. Well, the day before, you need to start thinking about hydrating yourself properly. And then the other part is, exercise. I was saying part of exercising your vocal cords is
Hmm.
using it with intention. So you might think, oh, yeah, well, we'll use it all the time. I'm talking, I'm speaking, I'm conversing with my family, what have you. Well, that is talking and speaking, sure, but doing it intentionally, where in radio, we are constantly reading scripts. We are making sure that we are using certain inflection in our voice. Like when you're excited, you're going to be a little bit higher. And so you can practice in that higher range. But then when you want to be serious, you might bring your tone down a little bit more. And so you're practicing in the lower range. And it's all about figuring out where you are in that range on a particular day. Everybody will be a little bit different. You can't always reach like the high notes or the low notes
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
you might be a little bit sick or you know what you've had a long weekend of like chatting with friends and so your vocal cords are tired. And so one of the things that people will say is, "Oh, yeah, like maybe if you're a singer, you can do like scales, you can go la 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 la, that sort of a thing." That does it does help, but being able to hone in with your diaphragm and your breath is actually what's going to help propel your voice come to life. Because your vocal cords, like I said, they were a muscle, but they can't do anything until air passes through it.
Yeah.
And so, in order for your vocal cords to work fully, is to make sure that you have enough breath. So, a lot of people will talk about this in terms of like yogic breathing, yoga breath, the diaphragm. So, the diaphragm is, I like to say, the band around your belly, which is just below the rib cage and above your belly button. So, if you put your hand there and you breathe
Mhm.
in, it should expand like a balloon. Your hand should come out. And when you breathe out, the balloon should contract. And that's when the air will come through your vocal cords, is that contraction phase of your diaphragm. And how you hold your breath will be how much air comes in and out between your vocal cords. So that is the practice. Sometimes I like to say for people, even when you're like laying down before you go to bed, you can do some breathing exercises to
Mhm.
control the amount of breath that comes in and out. So, for example, if you're laying in bed, and this is a great way to do it before bed because then you're relaxing your body, you're getting ready for bed. If you take a breath in through your nose, and when you exhale through your mouth, just quickly count how many seconds that might be. You know, it could
Mhm.
be 10 seconds, could be 8 seconds, wherever you're at. If it's a 10-second exhale, maybe the next time, try and go for 11. Maybe try to go for 12 after that. And then maybe try the opposite end of the scale. Maybe you want to go fast and you want to exhale 5 seconds. The way this translates is the faster you exhale, it's usually, I'm really excited. I really need to say something quick. So you're going to exhale quickly and take lots of little breaths, right? So that's what we're trying to emulate and have that exercise for. Or if you're going to slow right down and you're going to talk about something that has more depth, some more gravitas, you're going to slow right down and that breath that's coming out of your mouth is going to extend and elongate. So you need enough breath to propel your vocal cords to do its work. So that's, a little trick there. And
So
then
what do you yeah, and then?
uh, and then finally, I was just gonna say the third thing is that rest piece. You know, you were
Okay.
saying before, you were asking me about like, do you shout? Like, how do you prepare your voice?
Yeah, exactly.
That rest piece is so key because a lot of people forget that they need to rest. Because if you shout, if you're too loud, that's bad for your voice. But on the opposite end of
Mhm,
the scale,
mhm.
whispering is really bad too. Because when you're whispering, you're contracting your vocal cords and you're making them really, really, really tight.
And
And so when they're
God.
so tight, you're trying to force air through it and the muscles just can't move very well, right? So after you do a lot of talking, your vocal cords are moving a lot, you need that rest.
Mhm.
So make sure
So
when you have an interview or something that you
yeah,
schedule in some rest after.
after. Okay, so what I'm hearing right now is that the preparation is key. So the
Yes.
preparation before we go on air, that helps us keep listeners engaged because our voice is in its full operation.
Yeah. And
Can
that
I
you'll
say it
be
like that?
able to then be speaking in what I like to call variety, right?
Yeah.
Where
So you have
you
this
are,
inflection, ups and downs, higher tone, lower tones.
yeah, speed. Sometimes you want to talk a little bit faster, and then the next second you're going to slow it right down to make sure people understand that important point.
Mm.
Or
Mhm.
you're going to go really high up because of that excitement factor. So the variety is what is going to hold someone's attention. You want to keep shifting that variety. And that is
Wow,
part of your
thank you.
brand too. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly,
your
exactly.
voice
So
is your brand.
our voice is our brand. So tell me a little bit about your perspective on branding and how that ties into the whole concept of branding, our voice.
Yeah, I've had people who were like, okay, but do I really want to start a podcast? Because there are so many podcasts out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do we really differentiate with our voice through our podcast? And why do you think podcasting is such a great vehicle or medium in the whole landscape of communication or
Mhm.
touch points to our audience?
Exactly. It's such a great touch point because first of all, it really is such an intimate platform in that people are listening to you through their headphones. They're going about their day. They're taking you on their walks. They are doing dishes with you. People take their phones into their bathrooms, right? So you might be in there with them in the bathroom where you can't get more intimate than that. And so it's like you're a fly on the wall listening into this conversation. And that intimacy really is part of the branding part because no other platform has that ability like a podcast. You can't
Mhm.
hold as much attention on say like a blog or a social media post or something where in podcasting if your episode is an hour long, most people will typically listen for 80 to 100% of that entire episode. So they're with you for the long haul. And when people are like, yeah, well, there's so many podcasts out there, but your voice is like a fingerprint. Nobody else will have your exact same voice. So that is your branding key. It's your
Mm.
uniqueness. And some people might, I remember thinking, oh, well, my sister and we have the same voice. I hated it when we were growing up. And I would pick up the phone and they would always, ask for, they start talking to me as if I am my sister. I'm like, no, I'm Mary. Ugh, like, don't they hear the difference? But
Mhm.
you do. When now that we're adults and we each have our own personalities, our voices may be similar in range and pitch, but we speak very differently. I am more like high speed talker, and she is the calm, collected one. And so if people aren't fully paying attention, they might mistake us. But when people are listening to a podcast, they have intentionally decided to listen to you. They put on their headphones. They had to find your podcast on their app. They had to push that play button. And because of all of those steps, they have intentionally already said to their brain, hey, I want to listen to this person. I know who this person is. I want to hear what they have to say. And
Mm.
so that differentiating factor then becomes your voice and who you are, what you have to say, and all the messaging that you bring to the table. And so podcasting is such a key point because you can, have a great looking website. You can have all the YouTube videos you want, but a YouTube video, people don't usually take that with you. You're not in that intimate medium. People don't sit there and just listen to a pod. Not now, some people do, but most people are multitasking and taking you along the ride with them in the car, in the gym, you know.
So now, since this is such an intimate way of interacting with our clients or with our listeners, with our audience. Now, there is women out there that want to start a podcast, but they really feel overwhelmed by this whole technical aspects of starting a podcast.
Mhm.
What's your advice that you can give them that helps them overcome these challenges and confidently share their message when it
To
comes to
know
these technical elements?
yeah. To know, first of all, that it doesn't matter what microphone you have.
Hmm.
I think as long as you've got a microphone, that's great, and as long as you are in a quiet room. So because again, you're in that intimate medium, you do not want to have a dog barking in the background. You don't want your windows open with the traffic running by. That becomes very distracting. So if you want your voice to really be showcased, make sure you are in a quiet room, first of all, so that the tech can work. But know too that podcasting is a long game. It
Hmm.
isn't a quick fix marketing tactic. It is something that you want to create multiple episodes with so that every time you hit that record button, you are learning. You are testing something out. So then the next time you hit that record button, you can say, oh, yeah, that happened the last time. I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen and I'm going to try it this way. Or I've now created a little checklist so that, I remember to do A, B, and C because I didn't the last episode. So knowing that it is okay to make mistakes. If you listen to anybody's podcast, I'm even talking about like the ones that have been doing this for years. They sound like they know exactly what they're doing. I bet if you listen to their episode 1, it's not going to sound the same. It's going
No.
to sound, in comparison, terrible. But in that moment, when they created that first episode, it was the best that they could do in the
Mhm.
capacity that they had and knowledge at that time. Because
Yeah.
every time you create an episode, you learn something new. And when you're 10 episodes in, you're 2 episodes in, 500 episodes in, it's going to be very, very, very different. So have grace for yourself for that learning
Exactly.
period.
Absolutely. I remember I started 3 years ago, and I mean, I'm still, it's exciting, and sometimes I'm missing the words because, English is not my mother tongue. But I mean, once you made it past the 3rd episode, you are one of the 10% out there
Yeah.
that
Yep.
still exist after 3 episodes.
Exactly. Because most
And then
people are like,
there's
okay, I'm just going to plug in a microphone and give
exactly.
this a try.
And out of those 10, there's another 10% that make it past the 20. So
Yeah.
actually, it's because you said it's a long-term game.
Mhm.
You need to have consistency and not give up after the first, second, or third. It's just, something, as you say, it's a muscle that have to be trained like your
Yeah.
voice. It's something you have
Exactly.
to do consistently over time and
Yeah.
see how it evolves. And
I always
as you
like to
say,
tell yeah, I always like to tell my, clients that it takes about 12 to 15 episodes for you to get into that groove. So the
Mhm.
first 3 episodes are, "Okay, yes, I can do this. This is gonna be okay." And then by the time you hit that 12, 15 episode mark, it's, "I've got my workflow. I've tried it out a few times. Now what have I learned that I
Mhm.
can propel me for that next stage of the podcast creation?" So it
Yeah.
does take a while.
Yeah, but I think you also never get too comfortable because there's always new technology out there,
Yeah.
new software. Then you go from audio to include video. Now it's also being part of the social media platform YouTube. So podcasting also have become that thing on YouTube. So
Mhm.
there's another layer where video comes in.
And I think that's why I love
And
podcasting so much is because the industry is so new in comparison to when I was in radio, broadcasting in general. It's such an old traditional way of doing things where
Mhm.
podcasting is instead of broadcasting in a general population, podcasting is very niche and you can talk to one single person and reach that person in that defined niche. Podcasting is much more successful when you have a very narrow scope on who your listener is, and so then you can talk about whatever you want. You're not restricted to broadcast lens of their platform. You know what? If you want it to be a 10-minute show, it's a 10-minute show. If you want it to be a 60-minute show, it's a 60-minute show. If you want an intro, you can have one. If you don't want music, you don't have to have music. You are the boss of your show.
Yeah, exactly. And there's also another dimension that is coming with it, this community building for business owners.
Mhm.
You might do solos, but you also have people that come on your show you're doing an interview with. So, what do you think about podcasting as a tool to build a community, to build a network of business referrals? What is your take on that?
I love the podcasting community as a whole. When people find out you're a podcaster and they're a podcaster, like, let's meet up. Okay. But for business wise, though, it is a great way to grow your network and to build that larger circle of who you can connect to. Because, okay, you can go to a networking thing and meet someone and then be like, oh, okay, if I think of anybody, I'll refer you. But if you go to networking and you meet someone and then you're like, you know what, you'd be great on my show. Please come on my show. Or the other way around, they'll ask you to be on their show. You create such a deeper connection that when it is time to, hey, like for you, if someone's telling me, oh, I think I really need to figure out my branding, all of this stuff. I'm like, well, I had this really great conversation with Bridget, and I think you should talk to her because Bridget is going to redefine this whole branding for you, and I think she can help you out because we've had that intimate connection, like I was talking about. So building that network is huge in the podcasting space, but it not necessarily, you don't have to do it with an interview as well. Like actually had some people say, well, if I have a podcast, do I have to interview people? I'm like, no, but it is a great way to grow that network of yours. But I also find that if you want to have a podcast and be a leader in your industry, having some solo episodes is a great way to really build that thought leadership platform. Because if you want to be a thought leader and all you're doing is interviewing people and getting their ideas, well, where does your thought leadership come into play? And so I always recommend, if you are wanting to be a thought leader, but you still want to interview people, to have that rotation of episodes of the solo and the interview so that you can still grow your network and build that community, but still be that thought leader as well.
Beautiful. And I would like to ask you one more question regarding, more the technical part of creating podcasts and producing podcasts, editing podcasts. We are now living in the world of AI. So how are you? I think AI is a question that everyone is it's always coming up in one way or in another right now in this world of social media, branding and marketing, and pretty much in every industry. So how do you integrate AI in the realm of podcasting so that it becomes part of you? It's not taking over, but it's still an instrument that we try to make use of.
Yeah. I have many feelings about AI. But the interesting thing is I've been thinking more and more about this because it is so much more a part of our world.
Mm.
But AI actually has been around for quite a while. But
Yeah.
it wasn't until ChatGPT came along when it became more in the forefront of, oh, this is what AI is capable of. And I think how it integrates into podcasting is, yes, if it can help streamline your own workflow, to give you quick things that I can do a quick task on, then sure, I think AI can be integrated. But I think just like anything in AI, it needs a human to review it because it's not going to be 100% perfect. So if we go back to the idea of ChatGPT, a lot of people will say, oh, well, I can just generate it to write my show notes for me. It can summarize the audio, or it can, come up with a title for my show. And I'm like, okay, yes. But I can tell that some episodes are AI created. And so you can take what it's generated for you, but to make sure that it will always be in your voice, in
Mm.
your brand. There are certain words that you use, and eventually it learns those words, but at the same time, it's still a little bit robotic. So
Mm.
if you are using that tool, I would always suggest reading it out loud to yourself, not having it read to you, but you read it out loud and think, okay, if I said this to my ideal listener, will my ideal listener connect with me? Do I feel like I am myself when I am saying these words? And if they don't, you need to change it. You need to be able to reflect who you are as a personality, because that is who you are when you're hosting a show in radio. We used to call ourselves personalities, right? We're
Mm.
DJs on the air. And so you are a personality on your podcast. So you need to reflect that. And then there's other pieces too where AI could be able to help you, say, edit your show faster. There's tools where you can just say, "Hey, find all my filler words like and like, and just delete them." And that's where I say, you know what? This AI has actually been programmed from a very narrow lens of whoever programmed them, meaning in the speaking industry, it is a very, very male dominated industry. And so, hundreds of years ago, when this one guy decided this is how proper, quote unquote, people should sound like, he made that up. And over the years, people have now decided in Western society, this is the quote unquote proper way to say things.
Mm.
However, when you're on a podcast interview, when you're having a conversation with someone, everybody has ums and ahs and they're thinking because that's what they're doing. You're thinking while you're speaking. So when these AI tools come along and say, "Yay, at the touch of a button, you can remove all these things," my feel on that is that now we're removing the humanity of it all.
Mm.
We are removing how someone may speak with an accent, which is going to be very different from someone who's, I mean, you know what? Sorry, let's just say everybody actually has an accent. Everyone has an accent, but because AI believes the standard, quote unquote, standard North American accent is what is the quote unquote right accent, it
Mhm,
thinks
mhm,
something with an outsider's accent is wrong, or it
mhm, mhm,
cannot transcribe it properly because they're like, what is this? I don't know what
mm.
this is. And it creates this idealism for what speech and voice is supposed to sound like. And I don't think that is reflective of our real world, of your brand, of who you want to talk to. Because in podcasting, people are looking for other people who sound just like them. That's how you connect with someone.
Exactly. Yeah. It's on this emotional level because you, as a person, as a human, you give the soul into it. Your heart, your
Yeah.
soul, you bring the emotions. And as you say, ChatGPT, it's the technical part, it's the robotics, it's the
Mhm.
kind of the rational part of the whole thing. It helps you to maybe create faster, speed up the process, but
Mhm.
you still need to make sure there's
Yeah.
the brand voice, the heart, the emotions is in it.
Yeah, exactly. And there was an episode on my podcast. I interviewed this linguist from UVic, and she
Oh,
at the University of Victoria, and she just blew my mind. She did this study on it's called the 800 years of like. So using the word
mhm.
like, and just blew me away because she said people use like in very different ways and all the other filler words. When someone says is very different intention from when they say ah. And so if you actually listen to the way someone speaks, if they're going to say um 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 it's more of a hey, let me think about what I need to say next versus an which is I think she said it was like uh, uh in between thoughts. So an usually happens after a thought because you want to connect it to the next thought, and an
Mhm.
happens in between thoughts because you're looking for that connection piece. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I listen to audio all the time to edit interviews and it just amazed me." And so when AI is trying to take out all those ahs and ums, they're actually doing a huge disservice because now you're removing the natural thought patterns of humans.
Yeah, of bridging.
Of bridging, exactly. And
Yeah,
you do need those bridges. And I understand if there are long pauses, you can trim those out. Sure. I
sure.
mean, I get that because as a human who's listening, maybe, they want to get things done a little faster, or you don't have that visual aspect. That's the other tough part of
Mhm.
for most audio only podcasts, when you don't have that visual part, you don't get the visual cues of, okay, I'm thinking, I'm going to need to give me a second before I move on to the next thought. So I mean, yes, I can see why you wanna remove some of those things in
Mhm,
the podcast, but when you just magically hit that button and remove them all, you sound like a robot, and
mhm.
that's not what people are after.
Exactly, exactly. Thank you so much. I love this answer. I think the audience will be delighted. I mean, to see that. That is okay to say or in between.
Exactly. Yes,
That's part of humanity. Huh?
everyone does
Ah.
it. We are not creating a TED Talk here where we need to
No, we are
memorize
not.
speech. We are
Exactly.
having a conversation, and that will include ums and ahs and likes
Yeah.
and ya knows.
Yeah, and we are open and we are vulnerable and we are sharing our thoughts and our emotions and our how we think about things. And I think it's, as you say, it's a medium that offers this intimacy and also portraying of who we are as a person.
Yeah.
And we
We're
shouldn't take
creating the
that
next
away.
generation of speakers because
Exactly.
the little girl in me, there's a little girl out there as well that's probably listening to you. And so we want to showcase to them, hey, this is the real world. This
Mm.
is who you can be, not some truncated robot.
Yeah, and not perfect.
Hmm. There
Yeah,
is
and
no
it's okay.
perfection.
It's and that's okay. That's okay of not being perfect. I really struggled with that a lot. Going out and understanding I'm not being perfect, and now it's totally okay with me.
And then it does take a long time to go
Oh
through that
yes,
road too. Yes.
exactly.
Yeah. I
It
mean,
does. It
I remember
does.
too in when I worked at the radio station, there is so because I'm in Victoria and Victoria used to be a very British city. And
Yeah.
so over generations there would be a lot of British ways of speaking as well.
Mm.
And so if you've lived here for a long time, you would pronounce things like button. You would do all the T and the un button or mitten. And other people would just say like button, mitten, and not have those T words. And I would be voice coaching someone, and I remember they grew up here. They were like the third generation Victorian, and I'm like, "You speak weird. Like, what's wrong with you?" And I felt like I was a young kid. I was like a young 20-year-old, had no idea what she was doing really getting into radio. And he was just like, "What? Like this is me." And then one day, he had to voice a script that had the word Tuesday on it. So I pronounce it Tuesday. But because of his upbringing, he pronounced it Tuesday, more like chewing Tuesday. And it grated on my nerves because going to radio school, I was taught the quote unquote proper way of saying things. So, now looking back at myself 20 years later, I'm so embarrassed that I forced him essentially to change the way he spoke to this proper broadcast voice because he's like, but that's not how I say it. I say choose. And he even said, I don't know what you're saying. I can't hear the difference because I've always said it this way. And I'm like, no, it's Tuesday. It's got the letter T in front of it. Like, what are you doing? And so it's taken me a long time too to learn that, hey, it really is okay. There isn't perfection, and broadcasting was actually making things worse.
Oh, that's a beautiful experience. Nice story. Thank you so much. And I love this beautiful island of Victoria. I've been there several times teaching at UVic. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful university and it has got a lot of charm.
You'll have to
All
come visit
right.
again and we'll hang
Yes,
out in real
yes.
life.
Real life
Yeah.
with our mics.
Yeah.
All right. Mary, we are almost at the end of our podcast episode today. I would like to
Mhm.
do a real quick rapid fire terms word wrap.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All
Mhm.
right.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. Bring it.
All right. So, what comes top of mind when you hear entrepreneurship?
Ooh, well, for me, it's being your own boss, being
Mhm.
able to take on the clients that you want to take on and creating something that is true to your values.
Beautiful. Voice.
Personality. You really get to shine on who you are and speak your heart voice.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. Storytelling.
Ooh, yeah. You can't have a podcast without stories. Stories is the way that drives the listeners. It is how you connect with people. Stories is
Mhm.
at the heart of podcasting.
Yeah. Confidence.
Whether you believe you have it or not, everyone has it. You just got to go within to get that confidence to shine outward.
Okay. Two more, okay?
Okay,
Podcasting.
fun. That's just it.
Okay.
It's fun.
Fun. And last but not least, brands.
Oh, so vital because it is just it's beyond just the visual. It's all the different touch points. I got a new client recently, and I barely spoke 2 words to him, and he by the time we actually got on a call, he was like, "Yep, yep, where do I sign?" We didn't talk price, we didn't talk anything. And he said it was because he first found me on Google, he saw my website, he liked my messaging, he liked everything he saw there, he listened to my podcast, he liked what I had to say from there, and it felt like he already knew me. So by the time we actually had a Zoom call, he was in, done. And so branding is all of those pieces, right? They all connect.
Exactly. So, where do people, listeners, find you?
My website is
Hey.
organizedsound.ca. So organized with a Canadian, I say Z or Z, and .ca because I'm Canadian. So that's where you'll find my website. And I hang out a lot on LinkedIn too, so you can find me there.
Beautiful. Awesome. Thank you so much, Mary. It was such a pleasure having you today on BrandsTalk to share with us all your wisdom of how we empower our voice and unleash our confidence in podcasting, making podcasting our voice of our brain. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you. You know what? I just realized too. Find me on my podcast, of course.
Yes, it's
Podcaster's
gonna be
Guide
in
to
the
a
show
Visible
notes.
Voice. Go listen if you need more podcasting tips. I got a whole bunch on there to continue with this conversation. So thank you so much for having me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you. If you like my show, follow BrandsTalk on your preferred app, share it on social media, and if you find a minute or two, leave a quick rating or review. Thank you so much. If you want me to guide you to become a future market leader by transforming your ambitions and passion into an online brand that radiates beauty, brilliance, and authenticity, attracting the clients and recognition you deserve, drop me an email. I'd love to be your guide on your hero journey. Check out my website, bridgetbrands.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I hope you will stay tuned in on the next episode when we dive into the world of brains.